Terrific. Welcome everybody to September's session of Founders Q&A with Next founder and co-chair Anthony Millin. Really excited to have you here today and get your questions ready. Feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, or since we're a small group, also feel free to unmute yourself. And with that, I'll turn it over to Anthony to get us started.
Great. Well, it's great to be here today. We really enjoy these sessions and an opportunity to be able to address questions that you may have that we can try to shed some light on. So, with that, I will see if anyone wants to start off.
And I've put you all guys on the spot. Valentine, did you want to go first?
Well, I can go first. I'm not sure I'm well prepared. I thought I would just tune in and hear what people are talking about. But, I have some questions and, maybe we'll jumpstart the conversation.
Sure.
So I'm very new to it. I just started to get into this entrepreneurial field and the startup. And there's always the challenges with, where do you even start, or where do you find a mentor, right? Where do you find someone who's more experienced, who can help you with all these challenges? Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's really great to find mentors. One of the exciting things about the DC region in the last number of years is just the growth of resources, where if you're launching a company 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you were out there on your own a lot. And now with different accelerators and mentor networks and programs affiliated with universities, there's just a number of places to go where you can either meet other entrepreneurs or meet mentors who are happy to be able to participate in helping you grow your business. Tell me a little bit about, have you launched something, or are you in the process? Have you identified something where you're interested in getting started on solving a particular problem?
Well, this is a great question. Well, what we're trying to do is we want to do research, develop innovation in research, and my partner and I, we don't want to do it in a traditional academic settings, because traditional academic settings bring all this dependence on publishing papers and all this like traditional academic problems. In case of startups, you have a pressure from venture capital. But they want to deliver fast. They want something fast. We thought we would go on the path of nonprofit startup, where it's a nonprofit organization that does not have a pressure for venture capital, but we do need to raise money from donors, whether it's NSF grants, NIH grants, some federal grants. So we do have some ideas of what we would try to pursue. And of course, the research is in public domain. So it's all in public domain, right? So that's kind of an idea. And I think it gives me an extra challenge, because when I read about nonprofits, I hear charities. And with some scientific nonprofits, it's different.
So there's a difference between tapping into donations in a traditional nonprofit sense versus getting grants like an SBIR grant, where you can be a for-profit company and the grant is there to kind of stimulate new business development and growth of new small businesses and rapidly growing businesses. So just because you don't feel like you're ready or want to go after venture funding, there are a few different avenues available to you. One is, if there is somebody, if the research and development is not academic in nature, but is looking to solve, you're looking to develop something that is going to become a minimum viable product, something that you can then test in the marketplace, then there are investors, angel investors, if they like the team and they like the market that you're solving a problem for, who will invest at that stage to help you do the R&D to build an initial product or to come up with an additional technology or particular algorithms that will solve a particular problem. So there is that early stage capital for the development of the product or the algorithms or the technology or the solution in a for-profit company. There is also the ability to go after grant funding from the government. That could be federal or state, but particularly like the SBIR program, where you get kind of two different levels of grants. The first is more around the research, and the second is more around the commercialization. So I wouldn't jump right into, a nonprofit has, if your mission is a nonprofit driven mission, then you can look at setting up a nonprofit if 501c3 nonprofit, but I wouldn't jump into that just because of the initial capital challenge. Does that make sense?
It does. I need to think about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Valentin. Thanks for kicking us off. Sanjay has a question in the chat, Anthony, about C Corp formation, leaning towards Delaware, understanding the trade-offs between S Corp and C Corp. But is there a common process to start as an S Corp and then move to a C Corp? What are the benefits and the disadvantages?
So normally when you're setting up a new company for a business, there are certain limitations to the S Corp that are not included in the C Corp or the LLC. So it depends on the kind of business you're looking to build. So are you looking to build kind of a rapidly growing company where this is just the first step and you're looking to be able to pass through profits, but particularly pass through losses early on to get tax benefits for the pass-through, in which case you have more options and more flexibility with an LLC taxed as a partnership than as an S Corp. S Corp is limited to the number of classes of types of securities you can issue. It's limited to whether an investor is an individual or an entity. It has restrictions there. It has restrictions around international out of US investors. So typically you're either forming as a Delaware LLC and later based on certain criteria or drivers, you switch to a Delaware C Corp, or you just start as a Delaware C Corp. If you're looking to just have a small business with the kind of same founders, running that business, and you're not looking to bring on investors or entities that are investors or have two different classes of stock, or then an S Corp is an alternative and there are some benefits in that scenario. As far as Delaware is kind of the jurisdiction where most entities form, whether you do the LLC or the C Corp. It has, it's very kind of business favorable and friendly. It's really fast in terms of turnaround times when you're filing documents. If you have to file an amended and restated certificate of incorporation, you can do it with an hour's notice. You can file on an hour or on 2 hours or on 24 hours. Some other jurisdictions have much longer, and when something is time sensitive to closing and you're trying to file before you close, it's very predictable. Because so many companies have formed there, it's got a very sophisticated kind of corporate judiciary and a lot of precedent that people can anticipate and rely on. Because so many companies are formed there, the documents that people use, that investors use for investing in startup companies, particularly once you get to a series preferred round of funding, like a Series A preferred. The core documents that people use, the National Venture Capital Association form set, is all based on Delaware documents. So all investors will often say to you, if you're not already in Delaware, we want you to move from whatever jurisdiction you're in to be a Delaware C Corp, for instance, prior to us funding. So investors like it. So those are some of the reasons for an LLC and C Corp versus and kind of how those work, and also why people would pick to be in Delaware. And the difference between an LLC and a C Corp, you're going to be looking at things like, on the LLC side, you have the ability to pass through losses and you don't have double taxation, although with the corporate tax rate drop from 35% to, I believe, 21%, that difference isn't as great as it used to be. But in terms of what investors typically don't want to invest in an LLC, because they don't want that pass-through structure. If you're looking to give incentive stock options with the tax benefits of an incentive stock option, it's easier and much more favorable to do that through a C Corp versus unit appreciation rights in an LLC. And also there are some benefits to if you hold your shares for at least 5 years. There's some benefits of capital gains tax that is not taxed up to certain amounts. So those are kind of the things around that question.
Thanks.
Andre, any follow-up? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of follow-ups. So I'm trying to keep my options open. I think the LLC seems like it's risky because I may want to do a couple of the things that you mentioned in terms of stock options and incentives, or go after VC money. So I think the C Corp probably makes the most sense to me, but it seems, speaking to some accountants, it seems like it's a lot of overhead if I'm not quite sure. So is it fair to say that the S Corp is a halfway in between structure? Because I understand you just elect into your IRS returns, right, that you would like to file as an S Corp.
You can switch from it. As I said, it really depends on how soon you plan on bringing in investors or having multiple classes of stock. So, you know, C Corp, the overhead of a C Corp from an accounting point of view is a lot less than a partnership. Like to do a corporate tax return, for when I had my startup companies, I always found that the overhead for a partnership tax return was higher than for a corporate tax return. So as you start adding other people to your company, you doing K1s, the actual partnership return is more expensive and more time consuming and more overhead than a corporate tax return. So I don't necessarily, and I don't think the compliance is that different. You know, you file and with Delaware, there's an annual filing, but you file with your LLC as well. So I don't necessarily, especially as you start adding people to the cap table, the partnership return, I think, is a heavier lift.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about this maneuverability between the S Corp and the C Corp? I mean, my timeline, if it helps, is about 6 to 12 months. If things work out well, maybe a little bit longer if I need more time. Yeah.
So you can always convert. You can make an election, and you can speak to your accountant about how the tax treatment would be if it's a mid-year election between an S Corp and a C Corp. So you can go from an LLC to a C Corp or from an S Corp to a C Corp, but it's very hard to go you don't usually go in the other direction. The tax implications are greater. You just want to speak to your accountant and speak to an attorney to see, even if it's a 6 to 12 month runway, do you want the LLC as a pass-through entity, or do you want the S Corp as, depending on what else you're trying to do? If it's just you for 6 to 12 months and you're not bringing on any other investors in the next 6 months, to 12 months, then, you can kind of look at that. But I would, picking the right entity, there's no perfect entity. Every entity has some pluses and minuses depending on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to do now and what you're trying to do in the next 6 to 12 months. So you definitely want to talk to your accountant and your attorney to kind of figure out what's optimal, and sometimes even have all of them on the one phone call. Because, what you don't want to do is have, and sometimes we'll say to our clients, let's just get your accountant on the phone and let's just talk this through from kind of all perspectives and just come out at the optimal outcome, instead of one conversation on the legal side and then they give you some advice and then your accountant's giving you some different advice. And sometimes people aren't all aligned on the assumptions that are driving the decision. So one quick way to solve it is get your lawyer on the call, get your accountant on the call, you're on the call from a business perspective, and you kind of talk through the assumptions and the drivers and just come to an optimal solution based on where you are now and where you'll be in the next 6 to 12 months.
That makes sense.
Right.
One final follow-up, if I may. Any suggestions or guidance around Stripe Atlas, or I think Zen Business, Clerky, those types of rapid incorporation?
Yeah, we typically find that when companies come to us to do their seed round or their pre-seed round, and they've gone through one of those services, there are certain things that we redoing or adding to the mix. We have a fixed price package, and there are other attorneys who have different options, but I think sometimes these very quick off the shelf solutions get you formed, but there are things that also depends on if you have a single founder or multiple founders, whether you're doing vesting shares or not vesting shares. If you have multiple founders, you want to do vesting founder stock. So it also depends on what you're doing and how many people are involved, and if you want a customized set of documents, or you're just looking to quickly get something formed and it's just you. And so that's I think the more people are involved in the startup, it's not that you can't do it that way, but be prepared that when you're getting ready to go out and raise funding, there may be some kind of cleanup or remediation type of work that needs to happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Sanjay. And just to close the loop real quick, Valentina had a follow-up question on C Corp. You incorporate in Delaware, you file foreign qualification in whatever state you're operating in or states, but you never incorporate in multiple states.
That is correct. You will have one primary, like Delaware is your jurisdiction. That's where you're formed. And then anywhere where you have enough of a nexus in terms of your headquarters, your employees, you're going to qualify as a foreign corporation in those jurisdictions. And there are tests that can be done to figure out, like for sure, where your headquarters is, where you are, where your office is, where some of your employees are, you're going to qualify. And then as you grow and you expand into other parts of the country, you'll do a test to see if you have to do foreign qualifications in other jurisdictions as well.
Great. Thank you. Prab, anybody, Nelson, anybody else have a question?
Well, I was listening to the 7 mistakes session that you guys did. Catchy title for sure. Regardless of how many sessions I put up, people are still going to make some of those mistakes. And one thing I was hoping, maybe you plan to do this in the future, but if there's a way to know what are those 7 and in which order were they spoken, so I can quickly go to that part of the video and watch it. So that's one feedback. But the question I have, Anthony, is I know that I'm just finishing up my first friends and family round, and I'm getting the traction from the market the way that I was hoping. But I know that I will need to raise funds at some point in the future, in the next few months. So speaking of due diligence, the required due diligence required. I haven't, by the way, I didn't get a chance to go through all the 7 points, but the first one was important for me, due diligence. What sort of checklist or documents should I keep in mind, or someone like me should keep in mind when all that in such an early stage where they only just finished a friends and family round?
Right. So what the way it should be set up is there should be you keep it in an online data room. It doesn't have to be one of these ones you use with M&A deals that are very expensive and very complex. It could be, just like a box or a share file or something like that. And you're going to start to put in your documents, like for corporate structure, you'll have all the documents related to your formation. And you'll have a folder for your certificate, a folder for your bylaws, a folder for your organizational meeting, a folder, and you kind of load all of that in. For the financings, you're going to have a folder for each round of financing. So the friends and family round will have its own folder. And in that folder will be the consents, the security filings, the actual legal documents with each investor. And then as you start adding employees or consultants, you'll have folders for employees, folders for consultants. So instead of just keeping legal documents on your hard drive, you drop them in specific places. And it's helpful to have, and it's one thing we can provide you with, is kind of that folder structure along with the checklist.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
That goes with each folder. So the checklist would be like folder 6A is trademarks. And so when you're speaking to investors, you have that checklist, and then you've also got the folder structure.
That's great. So Lisa, is that something that I can follow up with you offline to get the checklist?
Absolutely.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. And any recommendations for accounting firms proactively to keep in mind?
Yes, so if you follow up with Lisa, we have a number of firms that we work with who work with startup companies and have a group that is very good, and we can share those with you from our next marketplace that you can see in the community section of our website. We have some accounting firms, and we're happy to, you can kind of click ones you want to meet with and do an intro. We've tried to make it very easy to find other service providers, like getting your 409A, getting director and officer insurance, getting accounting firms and banks. So we recognize that there's this kind of village of other providers who also need to provide services, and we've tried to make that very easy at Next through the community partner section of our website to identify and reach out to and connect with companies that provide those services.
And is there a general recommendation as to how many rounds of raising capital can be done on SAFE?
You can, what's become more and more common is the Series A round, as the markets become a little more challenging, has moved to the right, meaning the amount of traction, the amount of revenue, the level of the teams build out, those types of things that Series A investors were looking for, they're looking for even more before they come in with their Series A. So what does that mean for the Series seed financing? What it means is more and more companies are doing multiple Series seed rounds before they get to a Series A. So it's not like you do a Series seed safe and then you jump straight to a Series A. That can happen sometimes, but what's happening other times is you do your Series seed 1, and then you do a Series seed 2, and even a 3. We've even done somebody who recently did their fourth Series seed round as a safe. So they had 4 safe rounds before they got to their A round. So there's no limit. The key is have you hit the milestones that are ready for a Series A? And if not, you can just do another Series C. And those seeds come in at higher and higher caps because even though you haven't reached the Series A, you've de-risked the business so that your cap with each of those seed rounds, each of those safe rounds should be, your cap should be going up, your valuation cap.
Got it. Got it. And that would still be, the market forces will still influence the valuation cap?
Yeah, market forces will still, but as long as, if you were an $8 million cap, just say in your last round, and you've executed, and now you've got more traction, more proof of concept, more product market fit, maybe some revenue, or your product has been de-risked, so you're able to show a more robust technology solution. You've added some people to your advisory board or to your team, all those things that help de-risk the business from market risk, execution risk, technology risk. You would say, look, these are all the things we accomplished since the market gave us an $8 million cap. And therefore we feel now it should be 15 million, just saying.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Prab. Well, as we wrap up, you'll notice in the chat, there are lots of links for you. The session that Prab mentioned earlier, the 7 biggest mistakes when raising capital, is now part of Startup U, which is a new initiative from Next and our partner BizScalers. Think of it as like a masterclass for entrepreneurs. There is currently over 30 hours worth of content and documents and really interesting videos and courses. We'll be adding to it regularly. So, please sign up. It is completely free. Another great new resource is our Seed to Series A roadmap, which you can find on our website, and the link is in the chat for those of you raising capital. Really paints a nice picture, and Valentine, for you too, who's just sort of setting out, provides a really nice roadmap of all of the legal sort of stops along the way that you should pay attention to. And for our partners, as Anthony mentioned, Prab, we do have a partner program on the website, over 60 plus partners right now, several in the accounting space of different types. So please feel free to check that out. You can reach out to them directly, or I'm happy to make the introduction as well. And then, of course, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And then just obviously to continue to follow and stay in touch with Next, a great way is follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for our alert on our website, and of course, check out the events page. So we very much appreciate everybody joining today and hope you all have a nice weekend.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.